Appreciate you so much. And I'm going to hit you with I appreciate you so much. Abe, welcome back. Thank you. We are here. We are together. This is Lyrical Ones, episode 53. It's a trip. We've made it around the sun one whole lap, and here we are to start another lap again because it is a marathon on intergalactic status. I am grateful as ever, appreciative as the sun rises for every wind, cloud, and sky moment that I can get, and everything in between. I am your co-host, Sinio, and I'm joined by Outfluent. Outfluent, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm living a life on a Nimbus cloud, taking a break to be here, and I'm really in a great space, this time space. I'm happy to be in this moment with you, my co-host, and our guest today. Before we get to our guest, and I just want to express my gratitude that we have come this far, in time and in matter. We have changed. We've grown new cells, new hair, created new blood, all within our bodies. The trillions of cells in our body have basically been redone. So I'm happy to meet the you that is today. It's different from the one 53 weeks ago, 53 episodes ago. And so before we check in with our guest, Sin, how are you today?
You're saying new me, right? The new me, I feel like I got these baby traps going, baby, doing all this shoulder work that you put me on. You was like, just different variations. So I'm like, man, I'm trying to get yoked out here one time. In case, they need a new Bane. I could be baby Bane because I'm vertically challenged, but I'm going to make it happen. So, I'm appreciative. I mean, it's a thing right now where I feel like it's a golden time, right? Like I seen this performance yesterday. This singer called Nightbird. It was a commercial on YouTube for America's Got Talent. And usually I skip that, but I was like, something here, something that I don't know that I got to see. And then she begins talking about having cancer and having a 2% chance of survival. And she has a song called It's Okay. And she starts singing. I'm like, this too much. And at the end of it, when, they have a little share out talking, to kind of do a butcher of a summary of what she said, it was, you don't have to wait for things to stop being hard to be happy. And I was like, yo, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm going to ride that wave, and I'm just going to ride that wave and be happy. Regardless of the struggles I'm facing, regardless of what's in front of me, right? All Might greets every challenge with a smile. So I'm going to encompass that same level of energy and keep it going, right? No matter what's in front of me, whatever adversary or obstacle or barrier, I'm going to say, I'm going to be happy, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with it. So thank you for asking. I appreciate that.
All right, we got a guest today. We got another guest. We got Stephanie Franco here. She's in the building, and we roll the R's because that's what we was taught to do in California.
Yes.
And Stephanie, how are you this evening, this afternoon, this evening, this Wednesday? How are you?
Yes, it's definitely Wednesday, and I'm just sitting here listening to both of you speak, right? And I literally just had that same conversation with myself earlier about I really don't have to wait for everything to pass to fully be happy. So I feel really in alignment here. I'm maintaining a smile on my face despite anything that's happening, and I'm super honored to be here today. And congratulations for reaching all these episodes, because that is a huge milestone. And as a podcaster, every episode I'm like, whoo, oh my gosh, we did it. So congrats.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I much appreciate it.
Yes. And as a fellow podcaster, we want to thank you for bearing with us and your patience and grace as you join us today. And then also plug the podcast. What's your podcast? We're going to be saying it like 50 times today.
We are.
Yes. My podcast is called Werk Wyphyz. It's WERKWYPHYZ. And I actually started it with my work wife. Yes, I started it with my work wifey from my first job. Exactly. So that's still in process, really creating from a very like authentic space. I think that's always been something that we're still continuing to do. We just started like about a year ago. We released our episode number 7 2 weeks ago, and it was on rebirth and all the challenges that we've been overcoming these past couple of months. So yeah, still kind of getting adjusted to the flow of podcasting and what it's like to actually have a little baby of your own that you create and that you pour all your love into. Yeah.
That's
It is a
real.
baby.
That's real.
It needs
It is.
so much time,
Nurture.
attention, love, and care.
Yes, you gotta pour love, attention, and be intentional with it. So that's kind of what has been going on too.
So, we do have a very broad audience in terms of people that are listening all over the world. So, Werk Wyphyz, right? There's some intentionality behind the spelling from what you said, right? Because it elicited a response from Affluent. For those that are only listening, right? He was getting ready to start gigging. So, what inspired the spelling of Werk Wyphyz the way you spelt it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And me and my co-host, we love to disrupt like the English language. So we wanted it to really center like a unique way of being spelled. So we took kind of inspiration from disrupting the language in that sense, because we don't always believe that everything has to be correct in the English language. So we wanted to add our own twist to that. And so even when we write our descriptions for our episodes, we won't necessarily capitalize things or add periods, because it's just our way of like resisting the English language and really trying to create from a place that is radical and authentic to ourselves.
I appreciate that energy. I butcher all languages. I'm against everything.
Yes.
I'm anti everything. So I
That's
can
how we feel.
I can so resonate with disruption. I think it's so important that I think sometimes it's important to understand technique and form. I do think that's like super necessary, but I also think it shouldn't ever minimize someone, right? It shouldn't ever be used as a ruler against someone, right? I think the most important thing is, can you understand someone, not whether or not they're executing flawlessly, right? I think there's a big difference, because me being Afro-Latino, right, being Black and Latin, and having a duality of like, I don't have much of a relationship with the Spanish language other than the attempts I've had, or Duolingo, or my dad saying, why didn't you learn? And I'm saying, why didn't you teach me? Like, the thing that to me that resonates in my mind is English came from England, Spanish came from Spain, right? And I feel like a lot of times people on both sides of the fence, right, when that's their native tongue, right, they hone in on you not executing it the way I want you to, right? Versus, but can I understand you, right? Do I get the meaning? Do I get the message, right? Because if I can get what you're saying, why does it matter anything else, right? Because the most basic thing is the connection, not about, whether you're enslaved to my level of language, right? My linguistica, right? Like, for those that are geeking out there, I play Metal Gear Solid 5 and it messed me up because it was about the war on words, right? About the way that you conquer a nation isn't about who's in leadership. It's about what language are they using, right? And I think about that in everyday speech, right? So when you said Werk Wyphyz, and Affluent immediately registers wifey,
Yeah.
right? And the thing is, people from all over the world don't even know, right, the level of depth, right? To just having a couple PHs and Ys can change everything, right? But to hear disruption, I appreciate that. But even deeper is, where did that sense of urgency, or that sense of like, you know what, I'm gonna be disruptive, where did that come from for you? Like, because I see if it's in the title and it's in how you kind of show up and present your podcast, then I would believe being a disruptive force is a part of who you are. So how does that play into who you are?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would just say that I am an organizer at the core, like at the heart. I'm always just like thinking about liberation, tapping into radical imagination. And so a lot of the sentiments around that, right? And I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad, so I was protesting all the time, like all the time, protesting, like just advocating and really being on the streets. So a lot of that got carried into my work. And so when I met my co-host at our first job, we were working with young people in San Francisco. And a lot of what continues to inspire me is really reaching liberation. And with reaching liberation comes a lot of like disruption, right? And really tapping into our imagination of what our world can look like beyond the barriers that we currently have and beyond the systems that we currently have. So really when I create, even outside of my own podcast and my writing and in any other art that I am involved in, like I always center like how is it that we can achieve liberation in that sense, and how can we be free, because that's ultimately what I want to see in our world, right? Like liberation and freedom for all our communities. So that's a lot of what really inspires me, and I think it came out in that sense when me and my co-host created that title, where we wanted it to be fun and different, but we also wanted to disrupt the English language, because the English language, like who made that up, right? Like colonizers, and it continues to impact people in many different ways. So that's just a bit of what has personally inspired me in that.
No, that's what's up. I mean, it's recognized. It's kind of like liberation and freedom, especially right now, is even more pronounced, right? Like with the ease of access to having information available to you. There's like, coming from the Bay, to paint the picture, oftentimes when it comes to social issues, political issues, geographical issues, those that concern life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, you have a certain level of awareness because of what the Bay represents in that forward thinking, innovative mindset when it comes to being disruptive. It's kind of a part of every facet of what we do, from the best to the worst, right? When you think of technology, right, there's good and bad within it, and it's very disruptive in nature, right? When you think of, community organizing, right, you being an organizer, it can be a very disruptive force in the hierarchical structure of politics, right? So there's a lot, right? You go back to the Black Panthers, you go back to the Brown Berets, you go back to a lot of history that exists within the Bay primarily.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come from that, right? Having been accustomed to it, right? Where it's very much a part of who we are.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much our parents, right? Sometimes our parents come to the Bay and they're like, oh, opportunity. They don't realize their kids is getting radicalized because of the history and the access to information, right? And then what happens is we come in with that sense of different type of appreciation for that context, right? It's like, we don't want to disrespect where you came from and what you did, but I feel this need to not only try and accomplish what you set out for me, but also to take it up another notch and do something more, right? And so, not to make an assumption, but has that played a factor in your life, right? Trying to, kind of marry the bridge or create the connection between what your parents have set out for you and then your sense of vision of like, okay, I want to organize and I want to liberate and I want to help my people, right? But I can't also forget, where does my roots come from? Like, how does that play out for you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, it's been an interesting journey. I'm the first one in my family to go to college. So when I was, studying during undergrad, I was doing social welfare, and I really became more knowledgeable on kind of like you know, what is social justice, and like, what does it mean to me, and how do I, like, why do I want to continue to organize within our communities, right? And I grew up in the Bay, like I'm from Hayward. And so for me, it's so important to continue doing community work in my own community. And like the fact that I'm still here, right, amidst like gentrification, like that is an accomplishment in itself, right? That I haven't fully been pushed out yet, or that my family hasn't fully left yet. So I think when it comes to those types of thoughts and reflections, I haven't had much time to think about it, honestly, but I would say that I'm always very rooted in the Bay, and I'm always very like trying to make connections between different cultures, and trying to remain like open and conscious about all the different community issues that are happening within our Black community, our Asian American community, LGBTQ plus community, and continuing to really challenge myself in that sense of like, okay, how am I showing up? Like, how am I actually donating to organizations within Oakland, where I'm currently living at, or within Hayward, and how can I continue to kind of put my money where my mouth is versus just reposting things on Instagram, right? So I think for me, it's still a journey where I'm kind of bridging that, but it's always been about centering Black, Indigenous people of color, and really continuing to do what I want to do, which is like create from a place that's very authentic and centering liberation at all parts.
Yes, definitely is interesting, because like even having the inclination, right, to do what you want to do is almost like a byproduct of, you know, living out here, right? The exposure of entrepreneurship, the exposure of creativity, right? Where, you know, we're kind of in this this mixture of, you know, corporation, right, and independence, you know, while, right, you know, the politics promote tolerance, right, while people are still fighting for acceptance, right, and there's these large gaps, you know, pressed against each other, right, these large gaps of social classes, you know, pressed against each other, you know, around the corner from each other, across the street from each other, you know, just outside of buildings, you know, and you know, at some point something hits home for you, even though you grow up in it, you know, we're not actually desensitized to it. I think a lot of times, right, it compels you to, you know, to find a way. And I think, you know, when you, because of your just empathic nature, right, you say, well, I'm going to do more than watch, right? I'm going to do more than speak, right? I have to live out, you know, the things that I want to be, you know, that I want to say, and what that I want to hear, right? And you're doing that, but also then, right, like that exposure, you know, in your undergrad to other people, right, doing the same thing, right? There's a community of people, right? So you're not just the only
Yeah.
one protesting, but you say, right, okay, this is a place I belong, that, you know, I don't have to feel weird about wanting to do more. I don't have to feel out of place for wanting to do more. I can actually, right, pick up momentum, right? You can pick up momentum, and then like knowing that you're an organizer at heart is an amazing thing, that like that's your default, right? That you like to, you know, bring, you know, entities together, right, to make impact. um I think, you know, that in itself is amazing, because oppression uses visibility, right, to keep on oppressing, right, and liberation uses visibility, right, to bring forth freedom, right?
Right.
But you know visibility doesn't happen, you know, with impact unless there's organization, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so, like, you know, like being the organizer that you are, like what are some of the themes, like growing up, that led you to say, this is my lane?
Yeah. So like I said earlier, I grew up in Hayward. It was very diverse community, right? Like the Bay Area in general, super diverse. There's no place like the Bay, super proud.
For sure. Yeah.
Shout out to the hyphy movement. You
To
already
the
know.
haystack.
to the haystack. I would say some key themes that have continued to inspire me just in my art or in my organizing is like I said, like growing up. Oh, I grew up low income, so seeing a lot of people in my own family come from like immigrant backgrounds and come to the United States and want to build a better life. And also growing up in a community where I was surrounded by low income folks who were also people of color, and they were trying to like, you know, get out of Hayward and trying to graduate from high school, where a lot of staff would kind of belittle students and tell them like, hey, you're not even going to graduate, like you're not supposed to even graduate, you're not supposed to make it. So a lot of that really fueled me and really continued to inspire like my work when I went to Berkeley and when I had the chance to kind of step out of the haystack and connect with other people from San Francisco, Oakland, Los Angeles. And I was a very like Hayward is small. Hayward is very small, and it's very connected to a lot of different cities, Union City, San Leandro. And so for me to actually be in a different setting where I was surrounded by students who had parents as doctors, right? And my mom would clean hospitals for a living, and my dad was never really around. Like that's what would fuel me to really give back to my community and be a part of programs that could also mentor young people of color to get to college, because people did that for me. So I wanted to be that inspiration or that source, that form of empowerment for other young people and other people just in general, like who wanted to continue to go to college and continue to kind of expand or learn more or anything along that line. And I also recognize that going to college is a traditional route, but I also want to acknowledge like untraditional routes that other people have taken too. So that's a little bit about what kind of shaped me in terms of my organizing and just being on campus and really seeing like all the messed up ways that our world works, and being in ethnic studies and having critical conversations, and then finally being at a job and working 9 to 5 and feeling so limited by the nonprofit industrial complex and my ideas that really started to fuel me outside of work, where I was like, okay, how can I gain inspiration for working in the profession that I'm in right now? So I started writing, I started podcasting, I started doing more organizing work, and I think that has like it still fuels me in different ways. And of course, self-care and community care is very important. So making a balance with that.
That's dope. Like it's really interesting. Like you wanting to be an inspiration, like wanting to be a beacon, or wanting to impact those coming after you, right? And like acknowledging how you were fortunate and had been impacted and helped, and then wanting to pass it on, but also like finding a way to do it, right? And like jumping into that nonprofit scene, or looking for a way, like people who are really in the work already, and
Mm-hmm.
then becoming a creator, right? And then saying, right, my creativity is going to like your creativity is probably nourishing you and looking after you and your heart and your spirit, right, while you're witnessing and involved in, right, a lot of healing work for other people. But finding creativity, like how has the work influenced your creativity, and your creativity influenced the work?
Mm, dang, that's a good question.
Oh, because I know it's some stuff in there. Because I know it's some stuff in there.
Yeah, so you're saying how has my work influenced my creativity, and how has
Yeah,
my
yeah,
creativity influenced? Okay, okay.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Dang. I would say my work influenced my creativity first by I guess I would just feel very upset and limited in a lot of spaces. Yeah. um,
Yeah.
I would feel very limited in my ideas and ways that I could talk or ways that I can design programming. And so that's a big part of my fire, I guess, that was ignited,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that started to fuel my creativity. And growing up, I was very shy, and I still have a lot of shyness around my work and around being a creative. And that's something I'm still overcoming. And I think just being in a space where I've had the chance to like brainstorm with people and see other creatives like own their art unapologetically, I think that's where my work started to influence my creativity. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, no,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
I
You
would
did, you
say,
did, you did, right? It's like creating that fire, right? Had to come from somewhere, right? And
mhm,
so you get into this space, right? And then right now
yes,
you have this fire to now mold, right? Almost like, right? You can't have a flamethrower without a flame, right? You can't
yeah,
just be a
and
tank of gas, right?
yeah, and I would just go back to the whole idea or the whole existence of the nonprofit industrial complex, because as a person who studied social welfare, like I was filtered out to wanting to do community work and work in these structures that you have to meet deliverables and you have to do certain things to check off boxes. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. I want to speak my truth, and I want to write, and I want to envision liberation and not talk about specific things that are outlined by funders and grants. And I think at the core, I've always been a resistor. And that's a lot of what continues to fuel my work as well. So my creativity influence my current work. Like, do you mean my current like profession or?
Yeah, yeah, like the the workspace, right? Like whatever it is, right? Career, right? The current job, because your creativity, right, is still prevalent in your life. So,
Yes.
how is it? So let me say it like this: what is your art teaching you about showing up in the professional space?
Mm. It teaches me so many things. I would say the first is to continue being unapologetic about the ideas that are being presented. I'm a visionary. So even right now, I shifted from doing, yeah, you too.
No, 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 I'm talking about you. Nah,
Oh, oh,
like
I thought you were like,
that
I'm
don't
a
just that
visionary
don't just
too.
I don't just hear that every day. I'm a visionary. Feel me? I'm like, okay, that's what I want. That's what we want to know.
Forget what he's talking about. Me too. Yeah, me too. Of course, me too. 1000%. I'm like, I'm gonna sit back and just let this play out, and then I'm gonna go off. Watch.
Yeah, I'm a visionary, so I'm always thinking big picture, and I'm like, wait, why can't we do it this way? And why is it that we have to stick to kind of a norm? I feel like I shake up a lot of spaces, and it even makes me uncomfortable. But just working in a professional setting, I'm always like, why aren't we doing this? Why don't we have this? Like, why hasn't, yeah, I just be shaking a lot of things up, and I feel like that's my duty in life. And um I would like to call Asada Shakur like my life coach, because I always reference to Asada in ways that Asada was such a revolutionary. And I think that has even influenced my creative work to really be unapologetic and always center like the movement and building power.
Go.
For sure. Thank you. Um, Episode 53 of the Lyrical Ones podcast. We have Stephanie Franco, and Stephanie is a co-host of the Werk Wyphyz podcast. That's WERKWYPHYZ podcast. Now, Stephanie has just went off around a lot of things that, like, talk about a fire, right? We couple weeks, that we kind of like, this has been quite a run of people we've had on here because everyone has connected in some way or form to the last person. We had Dave Gibbons, and before that, who did we have? Who was that? That was on the podcast?
Art Hooker. We had Art Hooker on.
Art Hooker was talking about burning down doors, right? And so we have Stephanie now talking about the fire, right? And so, as much as this is a one episode, this is a long form narrative of transformation and healing and community and resistance to all of the oppressive structures that exist in the world. And when Stephanie said nonprofit industrial complex, I was like, oh, we got one today. Let me tell you, right? Because
we got fam on here.
Exactly, right? Because when you say those words, right, people don't understand this. So let me zoom out real quick, right? Talk about being a visionary and seeing the bigger picture, right? A lot of times a lot of people need to see it to believe it, right? They need to hold on to something. They need to experience it themselves because there's a lot of, well, how do you and your vision differ from mine? Well, being a visionary means sometimes I can see the whole road where all you see is 20 feet in front of you, right? I see the whole path and where we got to go. And I've already mapped it out because I can survey from the stars and using the geographical location of being on a mountaintop where I'm willing to make the climb where you're not, right? Being a visionary, right? So in nonprofit industrial complex, for those that are unfamiliar, unaware, and maybe take those words for granted, the Bay Area, especially San Francisco, has one of the most competitive and most extreme nonprofit industries in the world, right? Now, me being a fellow nonprofit slave, for lack of a better term, the thing is, right, I've sat on calls, nationwide calls. I've been in the game for a minute. I've had the chance to talk and meet with people and see and defer. And San Francisco has a lot of resources, overabundance, right? And that spreads out amongst the Bay Area. In terms of, right, this place has been traditionally one to think about taking care of others. That's what we initially, right? A lot of the movement comes into community organization or advocacy or work around trying to make changes, right? You could take it all the way back to the Summer of Love and the Huckleberry House, which was created because kids were running away from all of the homes all over the place, coming here because of, the flower power, if you will, hippie movement that was going on. And they were looking for a place to go and they were living on the streets and someone opened their homes. And now 50 years later, that's an organization that exists, right? But the thing is, whoever opened those doors no longer lives in that house, right? So as much as the name may be the same and as much as there may be that essence, a lot changes for the sake of survival, right? And so I say survival specifically because I'm referring to something that Nipsey Hussle has said many times. When you think of survival, morals and ethics go out the window, right? So we have a nonprofit and industrial complex that operates a lot of times out of this scarcity mindset, right? Because you're talking about, oh, we want you to create the deliverables and, follow the metrics and get the data. We want you to, make sure we have a packed capacity and make sure you have everyone that you need so you can do your monthly report and share out what you did at the end of the month. But at the end of the day, right, how much of that is really in alignment with sustainability? How much of that is being mindful and thoughtful of the clients or the people or the community that we serve, right? How much of that is integrated into the culture of the people and identifying how it may be harmful to the culture of the people, right? A lot of that gets washed out because the nonprofit industrial complex is an industrial complex, right? Mm-hmm. It's more about management. It's less about leadership, right? We have a lot of managers who can tell you, right, oh, we need an Excel document. But when it comes time to facilitate and lead a group, a lot of them struggle to connect. A lot of them struggle to hold the attention and be able to move the conversation for people to receive whatever services or resources are in front of them, right? So when you say all those things, I'm like, for sure, because people don't realize that, yeah, we have a tech industry, right? Like the tech industry in the Bay is ginormous, right? Everybody knows of Google, everybody knows of Facebook. But when it comes to the Bay Area and understanding what that means for nonprofits, right? It's only the ones who are like, and this happens a lot, and you may have come across it. I wanted to come and be a part of the culture of the Bay Area. I wanted to be a part of the movement. I wanted to come and be a part of the scene, right? That happens, right? Whether you're from LA or you're from Wisconsin, right? Whether you're from New York or whether you're from Florida, so many people will say, yeah, I wanted to come out here and be a part of the cause. I wanted to be a part of the people. I want to be a part of the culture, and not realizing that you're taking a spot from somebody who wants to be a part of the culture that is here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? People are here who want to take care of their own communities, yet we have so many people who ain't been a part of the community, haven't taken the time to understand and identify what the community is, trying to tell people how to live in their own communities, right? So it's a thing where the nonprofit industrial complex helps perpetuate this, because you could get somebody who is game goofy, right? And I say game goofy because that's a term that kind of recognizes your lack of experience when it comes to dealing with adverse situations and what most people will call adverse childhood trauma, right? Those are just common markers of life, right? I'm not trying to justify trauma as a rite of passage, but we oftentimes share these unfortunate rites of passage coming from where we come from. And you got people on the outside like, oh, you poor person, you poor child, oh, you at-risk youth, let me help you, right? And it's like, wait a minute, but how can you help me? You don't even know me. You don't even know who I am, where I come from. Yet you have an idea of a grandiose life for me that doesn't take into account who I am, right? It takes into account your data, your metrics. It takes into account your binary sheet of numbers. It doesn't really take into account the home that I got to go back to at the end of the night, right? And I think that that's something that you're highlighting that a lot of people aren't really aware of, right? We have people who will listen to this podcast and they'll be like, they won't see me snapping my fingers every time you say something, right? So they might miss out on the visual cues, right? They might not see every smirk and every smile because you're saying things that are of real merit, right? Where your education, by all means, is a merit within itself, but your experience and who you are matters so much more than any initial they could put behind your name. Right. And that's the thing that a nonprofit industrial complex a lot of times will not do. Right. They'll sit up there and they'll be like, well, what's the initials behind your name? Because then that will justify your leadership. Right. That will justify your vision. Right. Because you've invested and you're indebted and you're ingrained and inoculated in this industrial complex that perceives you more so than you perceive it. Right. It's like, oh, well, we're going to put you under magnifying glass. And if you don't fit within our criteria in our industrial complex, then we get to say how far and how much you can do, right? When you bring up those questions, you say, why don't we do it like this? A lot of times it's because they just stupid. That's really what it comes down to, right? They lack the experience or education or awareness to have any governing thoughts to really lead you in a direction where it's like, or even help you facilitate the leadership you need to establish, right? Because it don't matter about what position you're in. What matters is what you say has value. Let's see, right? Let's test the waters. Let's experiment. But a lot of times they be so squeamish that they don't even want to come near it. So, I just want to say all that to say, one, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your vision and what you're sharing, because it is very true. A lot of times you go into a space and it's not that they tell you need to be this way. It's that you see everyone else around you operating in this way. And you just feel this need to say, okay, well, do I need to just fit in line? Do I just need to go with the flow? Right? Because in my heart of hearts, I want to be disruptive. That's going to put me in this position where, am I going to have a job tomorrow? Right? Are they going to single me out? Are they going to attack me? Are they going to put something on me that's going to then be reflective of something that wasn't my intention? Right? And that's the thing, the nonprofit industrial complex, when it's an industrial complex, usually we're trying to manufacture and replicate something over and over again. Right? Could you make a program plan, or could you make your work plan, and could you share it with everyone? And you can't do what I do, right? No matter how many times I write it down, you can never duplicate me, right? But the nonprofit industrial complex will tell you, well, we deal in human capital, which is a nice way of saying we deal with the slaughter and mismanagement of people and emotions, right? It's like you come and you go. We don't care, because that's our capital. It's money. It's just a resource. It's just, it gonna come back. But in reality, no, we now have become awakened, right? As a community of people who are at service to the community, to then now be like, we just had a year that we realized the fabric of society and everything we were dependent on is a lie, right? Everything, we just seen it fall apart one after the other. And they was like, we don't know what to do. Here's $1,000. Hopefully you could figure it out. Oh, thank you. Thank you for making me realize what my worth is to the contribution of society. Thank you for making me realize, okay, you ain't thinking about me. You thinking about you, and you at the top. And how do I disrupt this if I keep following the line in the industrial complex, right? You could change nonprofit out for the prison system. You could change it out for the food. You could change it out for any aspect that we all need, right? Because nonprofits is a need. We provide services to people who may not have resources or those services, and we give access. But if the people controlling it aren't the people who reflect, know, understand, have any ties to the people we serve, well, how do you really know what you're doing, right? So being all that has been said, right? Take it back. Take it way back, right? Take us back to elementary school. What was elementary school like for Stephanie, right? What were the moments that you realized were going to be the ties to who you are now? What were those moments or those people? What were those programs? What were those teachers that maybe leaned in a little bit extra or gave you those words of wisdom, right? That was like, you know what? This is who I am, or this is what I appreciate. What was that?
Yeah, thank you for breaking that down, and also recognize that throwing out language like that, nonprofit industrial complex, and making sure that folks understand that too. I think in elementary school, I started writing in 3rd grade. I would have a little diary. You know, back in the day, it was known as a diary. Now it's journaling, bullet journaling, all that good stuff. But I grew up in a household where emotions wouldn't really be expressed. It was a lot of silence. So I took my thoughts to the page. I would write about my day. I would write about my feelings. And outside of writing, I was also in our school's choir. I was in choir literally from 4th grade to 12th grade in high school. And it's really funny because now I'm doing a bit of like sound engineer and sound design work. And I see a lot of my ear connection, like, you know, the tonal memory and the cutting and the beats and stuff. Like, I was always really good at picking up tonal things. I wasn't a music reader. I hated reading music, but I could really just pick up on sound. And I see that flowing into my creative work now and my digital storytelling work, and my writing flows into my script writing for podcasting, or if I'm hosting workshops for young people to learn about podcasting. So it's really interesting to see that. And I would just say that that was a little bit about who I was as a kid. And like I said, I was very shy about like singing, and it took me so long to really like be comfortable with the gifts that God has blessed me with. And I think now I'm still also understanding that and exploring that.
Okay, I feel that. I appreciate that. 3rd grade, getting your writing skills going. You know, a lot of times your first real understanding of fundamentals of poetry, I feel like it's 3rd grade when,
right,
you know, you're like really starting to understand, oh, I made this. I wrote this. This is me. I'm going to keep writing because I got more to say. And, you know, having that that awareness, that self-awareness, right? That distinction of, or the instinct and distinction to say, I'm going to write about my feelings because I don't see feelings being communicated. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to channel it so I can put it somewhere. Right. So let me write it out. Right. Because, you know, when you say that, right, it wasn't so much shared in your house. To me, that highlights, you know, kind of the roots, right. The foundation of what you come from. And so, you know, I say to people, right, and they get, you know, I say this often, I am the descendant of American slavery, right? And I'm the first generation of illegal immigration, right? And the thing is I want to paint that picture because that's within the scope of what America has determined as what they want to classify and put into a demographic, right? But deeper than that, right? What does that mean? That means I understand the multi-generational impact of slavery, and I've been impacted in my own way, in my own experience. And then I also have this distinction of what illegal immigration is like from the, eyes and viewpoint of my father, right? Like this understanding of like, what do these different things mean in a larger context of my upcoming in society? Because it's like, yeah, for him coming from El Salvador, Civil War, that impacts him, and then it reflects in the household with him coping, right? And it's not that we're identifying and calling God as coping. It's just, well, there's a bottle and I'm gonna drink it because it's gonna give me this a way to release my inhibitions or whatever I'm holding on to for this brief moment in time. And then what comes from that, right? Now, you don't have to go to that level of depth, but I just want to know, like, where's your parents from, right? Are they originally from California? Are they from a different place? Like, where is that in the world?
Yeah, so I was born here, and my mom and my dad are also from Mexico. So my mom's from Sinaloa, Culiacan, and then my dad's from Guadalajara, Jalisco. So a lot of kind of like growing up, I was able to see them really going through that challenge of like being an immigrant coming here, trying to figure out their path. Like I know my mom back in Sinaloa, she was like, she had somewhat of a stable job, but then having to come here and transition into working like at a food court or at a hospital. And I think that has also like, that was a lot of what I saw growing up, and really being able to see my mom not being treated correctly at her job, like not having a livable wage. I think it really did push me to do programs. I'm answering like the second part of the question. It influenced me to do programs that were for like first generation students who were the first people to go to college in their family, who were historically low income. And I don't think it was until those moments where I was connected to mentors in those like those programs for young people. I think that was the first time that I started feeling a little inspired to think about what I really wanted to do in my life, or how I wanted to give back to my community or my family, mainly because of what I saw growing up with my mom and her being a single parent, and my dad being very absent from the picture.
No, that's real. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that, because it is a thing that, it's those moments that guide a lot of what we do and how we are, right? It's for me, like you brought up earlier, talking about like, how do you maintain that balance of kind of these two identities, right? Like, where it's me in my professional world, and then there's me in my personal world, and how do they either mix, or how do they disagree, right? And so for me, you looking at it, I got a mask on. Like, I don't want me to be a part, because I said I want a boundary, right? And everyone finds and defines what their own boundaries are and how those boundaries look. And I think it's important to just identify what that is, right? To know that you own that, right? Because it is a thing that, yeah, we oftentimes look to the past and see where we came from or what our family has been through. And it's like, yeah, that disruptive nature of saying, okay, I'm going to leave the stability that I have here for taking a chance for something else, right? And now you are the byproduct of that chance, right? You are now, as they say, risking it for the biscuit to do so much more, right? Beyond probably your mom's wildest idea, dreams, thoughts, right? Like, has there been a moment where your mom's been like, wait, you doing what? Like,
yes. Yeah, and that's really on point with what I have also been reflecting on, because I wouldn't really share with my mom like what I was doing. I don't think my mom had ever heard like any of my poems until I read it to her one day in front of my family, because I wrote a poem about my aunt. She's also a creative in her own way, cooks. She's the chef. Like, She sews things, decorates cakes. Like, she's amazing. And I always think about, yeah, the lineage in my family and how a lot of them didn't have that opportunity to create, and how I'm living my ancestors' wildest dreams and just like owning my truth and being that byproduct of all the violence they have overcome, all the truths they didn't really speak in life because they may have been afraid to. So that's what I also carry within myself when I say that I go into spaces and I shake them up, because I feel like that is the duty that I live from in regards to my ancestors too.
Oh, that's real. That's real. I mean, what do you do? You know, you work in a very adverse culture, right? You're dealing with multiple levels of adversity, right? Whether it's directly in your life or you taking it on from someone else that you work with or who you serve. What do you do to maintain wellness and find that balance to take care of you? Like, what does that mean, right?
I know. I was like, how do I take care of myself? I'm a huge mental health advocate. I currently do mental health work. And for me, it's always an ongoing journey. Like, what is it that I need every day? I go to therapy. I really believe in therapy as a form of just like holding space for your emotions and your thoughts. I journal. I do boxing. I hold a lot of rage in my heart, and I really need to like punch something. um, so yeah, and I also just really try to, I guess, work on my inner dialogue. I could be a critic of myself oftentimes, and just really understanding like how to sit with my inner child and parent my own inner child when I'm feeling hurt or any type of abandonment or loss. I think a lot of that has really helped me when I've been in therapy, and understanding like, okay, how can I be my own best friend right now in this moment and really be there for myself. But I also believe in leaning in community, and we always can't do it by ourselves. So leaning on my family and folks who are very supportive of me, like, I think that's also my other form of taking care.
No, that's what's up. Affluent, take it away.
Yeah, Stephanie, when you talking about your different forms of self care. A lot of times on this podcast we talk about our needs, and having our needs met or our needs lacking. And what do you what would you say is a benefit of the way that you self care and the balance that it brings, or like what do you in what ways what benefits do you seek um, in your different forms of self care?
Hmm. Yeah. So some of the, I guess, some of the benefits that you were saying the benefits that I seek from my self
Yeah, yeah,
care.
yeah,
Yeah, I just seek a lot of like just feeling full in my own spirit, like rejuvenating myself. And it comes down to basic needs, right? Like drinking water,
yeah. That's a
cooking
bar.
cooking something for yourself, cooking. And I would say that I'm a very passionate person. I pour a lot of my heart and soul into like people and spaces and projects. And I think what I really seek is peace and fullness within myself, because when I can be full, I can actually practice my boundaries, and I can actually practice vocalizing my needs and being unafraid to say, hey, this is what I actually need right now, and this is not what I need right now. And I can also create from a place of authenticity, because when I'm not taking care and I'm not having time to rest and I'm not sleeping and I'm like over here people pleasing, I'm a recovering people pleaser and a recovering perfectionist. Like, when I can take time to really tune into my spirit, I can really create from a place that's authentic, that's genuine, that's unapologetic, and I can also fully show up with people and be present and not be in my head, because I be in my head a lot.
Yeah, straight up, straight up. And folks listening, all the lyrical ones listening, we call everybody lyrical ones because we all have a story to tell, and it's important that we find our voices and the lyrics to our stories. That's what being gangster is about, right? Feeling full.
Yes.
Like it's not easy to find where you're broken and where you're fragmented. It's not easy to come to awareness of what those things are, and the more you work on finding out where those things are, because you have one, if the acknowledging that we are fragmented and that there are things that we are missing from our lives, is how we get to identify our needs. We say, oh, well, I really need this, or like, I really need this, and like, I'm not getting it. So yeah, like when you say, let's just like drinking water, getting enough rest, when you like able to acknowledge, oh, there are things that I'm missing from my life that help me be a better me, that help me feel complete. And when I can acknowledge and say, when I'm missing these things, right, I feel less like myself. I feel less like I'm capable of doing the things that I want to do or the way that I want to live my life. Acknowledging that, then you're able to address and say, okay, well, I need to be around this type of energy because that helps me feel more like me. Or I need to be passionate in this way because being passionate with other people is great, but it's draining. And I need to go back the other way and find out how to pour back into myself. And that phrase of fullness and feeling whole is a bar in itself, and it's I think it's important that we acknowledge. I think we often talk about our needs and having those needs met, but then also like, why is it important to have those needs met? And that idea of feeling full and feeling whole is something that's important, because I think we don't like getting to the place of acknowledging your brokenness is one thing, right? Or acknowledging like what's missing in your life, or like what was, the injustices that are in your life, whether, they're systemic or personal or individual or relational. There are injustices that happen in our lives. And, we, have to acknowledge, say, oh, that wasn't fair to me, or this wasn't fair to me, or I wasn't fair in this situation to somebody. And acknowledging, where those injustices are, and then where we fit into those things, those events and occurrences, and then saying, okay, well, I did that out of, right, a need for this, right? Or I felt that way out of a need for that, or I responded out of a need for that, or because I lost that, right, I developed the need for this. And then we can address those things. And, that's why I wanted to know about like what benefits you seek, and like, like what is that motivation, for doing that? Because like even in acknowledging it, like what is, we don't always then pursue our needs, right? And so like I appreciate you, just sharing, and being, vulnerable in that sense, saying, I need to feel like the whole me.
Werk Wyphyz is the podcast. Stephanie Franco is the guest. This is episode 53. And how you spell it is WERK WYPHYZ podcast. Okay. So the thing that when you said feeling full, right? Like that's a hard bar, right? Like you came through, you delivered, dropped that on us, and it's real. Like you gotta feel whole, you gotta feel full. Like it means so much, right? Because when you're talking about like taking care of your mind, taking care of your body, taking care of your whole self, right? That's being full. That's being intentional. That's being present with self, right? Saying I'm a recovering people pleaser. Like, let me tell you, right? The need for boundaries is real, right? The need to know your capacity, right? There's room to push your limits at all times, right? You can go beyond your limits, but you got to set boundaries, because you got to know, right? There's a time and place for everything, right? You got to recharge your batteries for you to be the superhero you need to be, right? And that's something that we don't always explore or have a conversation about because it's ingrained in us. You could be whatever you want to be, but work hard, right? Do everything you need to do to get the good grades, right? Attend, be present, right? Are you sleeping? Why aren't you reading? Why aren't you doing this, right? Then it becomes this accusatory, almost like minimizing of like, you don't know this. And, it becomes this slight kind of disrespect to your process, right? What is your process? And you now realize for me to be functional and to be present, I need sleep. I need to step away. I need to go and box. I need to go and eat something that's going to replenish and give me a sense of happiness or, rejuvenation. Right. And I think that, we oftentimes bring up those things because we go to school for X amount of years. And as much as they're giving us information, they're never giving us really anything that is reflective of like taking care of you. Right. Like, how many times have you heard in class, right, the path to loving you, right? It's not even a topic of discussion as much as we know about, the different branches of government that we forget after about a year. It's like, come on, the algebraic formulas that they want us to know for that period of time that we'll probably never have to see again. If that's not our interest of the discovery of X, what about the discovery of self? Right. And that's something that is always put on us. But then when we go and do it, then it's put into all these like, oh, they losing their mind, or they don't know what they want, or they indecisive, or they keep moving around in jobs, or they don't know, they can't hold on to nothing. And it's like, what? So we could fail the test and get, you got an F and you can't, like, what? Like, when do we say, you know what? That's okay. Like, you figuring it out, right? Like, you just trying to hone in on who you are, right? And now you're honing in on who you are, and you realize I'm a recovering people pleaser, right? I'm a person that realizes I might have gone out of my way or given so much, or I might see the light in you that you don't even harness in yourself. And so I'm pouring into you when I really need to be pouring back into me. Right.
Yep.
A lot of times we get so lost in that passion and desire for community that we don't even realize what place do the people in our community hold, right? Are you holding the spot that I need you to be in? Or am I trying to make you to be everything, right? Because it ain't about making you be everything. It's about you being what I need you to be, right? A lot of times we get so wrapped up in like realizing everything exists within us and that everybody else just need to play their role, right? Because I'm going to play my role in your life, right? And that's what I need to do. But a lot of times we don't think it like I'm gonna be your everything. You're gonna be my everything, right?
Yeah.
Or you are my everything and you can't even live up to being my everything, but I know you can because you got the potential, right? I know I got the potential for so much more, but I limit myself because of you, right? A lot of times that happens because, it's real. Like, I'm speaking to it because I've been through it. I'm speaking to it because when you say certain things, you playing certain chords on the guitar of life where I'm like, oh, I know that melody all too well. So, let me go and get my riff off too. Because it's a thing where, we oftentimes find ourselves in these very tumultuous situations, or we find ourselves in these situations that are as much of a learning experience, could also be somewhat irreparable damage, right? And we have to be mindful of how far we're going in these different directions, because the one thing you cannot get back, you can love and loss and then love again, but you can't get that time back, right? You cannot. Once that time is gone, the time is gone. And I hear you have definitely kind of started honing in on what that time is for yourself, and it's appreciated to hear because being a Latina female from the Bay, right, is one thing, right? But then to say, you know what, I'm making active decisions in my day to vote with my dollars, right? To show up in ways that are like either I'm there or in a passive way, I can still give a contribution, right? To say like, I need to be an organizer, but I need to also organize myself, right? Like there's these steps and intervals that we all have. And, it's reflective of a lot of times what I hold down onto as being a part of a community, right? Being a community member, right? And it's vital. We have family, we have friends, we have associates, we have people we know, but it's a community. It's a belonging, right? We're all here together. But knowing your position and how far and how much you give is so important. So I'm so glad you said that. But talking about community, who was the community member of the Lyrical Opposition family tree that got you into this podcast today? Really, who is that person?
Figo.
Hey,
So
Figo.
yes.
Figo
So are you
Navarro.
working with Figo currently on something?
No. So Figo and I met almost 4 years ago. Oh man, I'm like 3, 4 years ago.
I mean, 2020 is like 15 years, so it's all good if you
Right,
say
Gang, gang,
whatever.
gang.
right. Yeah, so I met Figo when I was actually doing an after school program for young people at Mission High School. And I remember one time he like randomly popped up on my Instagram and it was like, "Oh, check out this show in San Francisco." And I was like, "Wait, isn't that the guy I work with?" And I started talking to him about writing and we started talking about like just being creatives and yeah, that's how we met. That
That's what's
worked.
up.
Nice.
Figo, my anchor for real, for real. Figo be keeping me grounded to Earth because I'll be ready to take a rocket ship up out of here. So shout out to Figo for getting you into the lyrical ones and the lyrical opposition family tree because Figo definitely that's why I'm on the podcast. He was like, "Hey, we need your voice," and I was like, "All right." And I knew I was fluent for a lifetime ago, and I was like, "Well, this is familiar folks anyway, right? Like I trust them, right?" Because Figo, we met through nonprofit work. We met through the
Same.
nonprofit industrial complex, right?
Same.
He was a youth who was needed a service, and I was providing a service, right? And it was a thing where, I was like, bruh, just go and do your thing, right? You gonna get these Oscars and these Grammys. You doing movies, you rapping. Like, don't come back to the community. And it's like, bruh, I gotta take care of my people. And I was like, all right, you know what? Do it.
Sounds
Be
like
there for your
Figo.
people, right? So it's a thing where I appreciate Figo because like he is he's an anchor for a lot of movements, a lot of different things, and knowing that that's the tie, right? You Mission High School, you had one of the most historical places in the city, and you're experiencing right through these youth all of the different variety and spectrum of life, and then to meet somebody and not even realize to the power of like social media, be like, oh, they are artists, what? And he's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, no,
Yeah.
maintaining that boundary, right? I'm not gonna promote myself here because I'm here to do a job. I'm responsible to these youth, right?
That's
but you find out, you
hilarious.
like, bro, what you doing? What you got going on? Oh, I'm a creative too. And then it's that organic just happenstance of life. So that's much appreciated, knowing that that's the bond, right? Because
yeah. And I think Figo like definitely connects people very well. And he'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I know somebody here. Like you should talk to them." Or like, "You want to do spoken word? Like come to one of our shows." Or "You want to talk about your podcast? Like here, connect here." And I think we need those people, right? That can connect us within our creative movements or in our social justice movement. Like, so yes, much appreciation.
no, definitely much appreciation. It's you're right. Like it's about the community, right? And the people in your community and them playing a role in your community, right? I think it's, I always say, referencing kind of the very harsh generalization of what it means to be a part of a tribe, right? Like everyone has a role, right? We got the hunters, we got the gatherers, we have our doctors, we have our chiefs, we have all these different positions and people, and we all sit and live within this community in this circle together. No one's higher than the other than our respect and our appreciation for your responsibility to the larger whole, right? And I think that's always what I'm coming back to, right? When you say social justice, right? To me, I'm all for it, right? I'm for restorative justice, right? And what does that really mean? You got to break those things down. You got to explore, you got to discover, and then own that and have it show up through you, right? And I hear it in everything you're doing and what you're a part of, that, you're mindful, informed by your life to then see and recognize in others, how can I be of support? How can I show up for you? And how can I also maintain that balance for my own self-discovery and growth to take care of me and be mindful of those around me to continue that growth and that distinction of, let's explore the territories of why is it like this and why can't we just go this way, right? And I think that's super important, right? Being a visionary is forever necessary. It's so vital. And I can only extend my energy to say, I hope none of these people ever try to diminish or turn down the volume of what it is you bring to the table, because a lot of times that's what they do. And they only do it because they trying to project their fears on you.
Right.
But you not a screen, right? You a screenwriter. It's a very big difference. Don't project on Stephanie. Go and project that on a screen. Don't project that on others. Go and project that in your dreams. Because as far as what we do and the work that happens in the community, we don't need your fear. We don't need your insecurities. We don't need your instabilities. We don't need what gives you the heebie-jeebies, right? What we need support. What we need to know that you have our back. What we need is to know that you can, if not see it, be willing to see what happens, right? Because I think that's the crucial point, right? I'm not sitting here trying to minimize the scope of the ones who cause us harm. I'm just trying to have them understand, how do you stop the harm from continuing, right? Don't enable, don't be complicit, right? Understand what is your role in it, and then listen to us when it is, okay, we got a vision, we have something that we want to do. How can you support us? Don't be destructive. Don't take away. And I think that that's what I get from what you're saying, right? Is how do we support you in seeing the vision that you have? Because you matter, your vision matters, right? It's not just about what you write, it's about what you share. And I think that we need to uplift and highlight that, as we often do here on the Lyrical Ones podcast, episode 53, Lyrical Ones with Stephanie Franco. But it is so super real that, yeah, let's be more concerned with how we build each other up than how we decide to nitpick and try and pull apart and break people down. So, Stephanie, do you have any other thoughts or any other things that you want to share with the people who are listening right now and will listen in posterity for the future?
I would just say create to liberate, love, center love in all forms, and prioritize your healing in all the ways that you can.
That's what's up. That's real. Definitely center love. Dead center. Affluent, you got any final thoughts for the people as we start to wrap up episode 53 of the Lyrical Ones podcast?
I just want to go back to Stephanie's bar about being a recovering perfectionist.
I had to name it,
because like it's what they call paralysis by analysis, right? Being in a place of processing and thinking and wanting to get it right and be in this place of rigidity, looking for correctness, and so much perfection comes out of being indifferent to things, and letting things happen, letting them occur, and putting them out there in the world. And sometimes they can't reach their potentials until you let them go. Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to art. It can never be fully realized if I keep it to myself.
Right.
And so it becomes perfect, right, in its interpretation, right, in its impact, in its sharing, right, in its communal form. And that's the best thing about art is that it's complete, right, once it's received by who it's made for, right. And if I make it for myself and I come back to it, right, then it's complete there. If I make it, once I say that I'm gonna release it, like even if I draw it and I say this is for me, and then for whatever reason time space happens where it's seen or received by someone else, right, then that's who is supposed to see it, right, that's who was supposed to come across it, and then it's able to then transform and impact their life in some way, right, create a ripple effect. And it's a part of your story, right? So I think for the folks that are listening, when you are sharing your experience, right, you're sharing your story and you're sharing your history, and you are bringing in whoever is listening into a world that they have not experienced, because it's your experience that they have not lived through. And even if they come from a home that's similar, with the same makeup, with the same missing members, and the same income and the same geography and the, in the same block, they don't walk through the same door as you, and they don't live in the same heart as you. And it's so important that we take care to listen to folks sharing their stories. And if you come across a visionary that respects the hyphy movement, pay attention just for a minute, because you might learn something.
Yes.
That's my piece. That's my piece. We got the co-host here. We got the co-host of the Werk Wyphyz. Cindy, spell it for him one more time.
WERK. W. Y as in you. P as in pie. H as in horse. Y as in yours. Z as in zebra. Werk Wyphyz podcast look like it's on every streaming platform you could get it on. So, support the community and get involved and listen to what they got to say. Stephanie, I appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing and giving us insight and giving me place to reflect on my own existence within this larger non-profit industrial complex, and how we can move past those boundaries and explore our own individuality, our own self-reliance, and explore a world where, yes, we can see the vision that we have within ourselves. So thank you so much. And per usual, as we often do at this time. Tell them how to contact you. Yeah, what's the contact? How can they reach out? Like
Stephanie on the Twitter.
Stephanie,
how can we get a hold of you?
In a house.
I want to say thank you to both of you for having me and asking me really meaningful questions and giving me the space to highlight my experiences and my work. So thank you. And this was the highlight of my day. So appreciate that a lot. Folks can find me on Instagram, StephaneeZzyy. And I also have a website. It's sfranco.squarespace.com. And as you all mentioned earlier, Werk Wyphyz can also be found on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, and we release once a month.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So, y'all stay connected. It's been real. As we often do at this time. Hopefully I don't mess this up. I don't think I will.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Hey, who's there with the hyphy movement? Listen, hey, coming through on the YouTube.
I'll knock the mic over.
One.